Welcome to Your Mythology Book Club. I'm Daniel, and I'm a Greek mythology enthusiast. In this series, we're exploring the Iliad, and in this episode, can you believe it? We'll cover Book 24, the very last book of the Iliad. We're here, we made it! This book is a beautiful conclusion to the story of Achilles' wrath. Achilles is ready to face this conclusion only now after all he's gone through and what he lost because of his wrath. We're going to see two men go on journeys during book 24. One will be a literal journey, but both journeys will have metaphorical components to them. At the end of each journey, each man will find the resolution that they need to move on with their lives. Of course, one of them is Achilles. I'll explain more about the journeys as we go, but first, let's do a quick recap of the previous book to get ourselves caught up. In book 23, we witness the funeral for Patroclus, and then the funeral games held in his honor. This was all part of Achilles wanting to do every single thing he could to both pay his respects to his beloved departed Patroclus and also to delay the final goodbye. But the goodbye was finally said, and Patroclus's body has been cremated and his bones placed into the funerary urn, which will one day also hold Achilles' bones. There's nothing left in life for Achilles. There's just nothing left that brings him joy. Achilles is stuck. And the other Greeks are moving on. With the funeral and the games over, they've all dispersed to their suppers and their beds. The other Greeks did their grieving, and now life and the war for them has to move on. But not for Achilles. He's up all night, again, restless, tossing and turning. This is where we find Achilles at the opening of book 24. Sometimes he'll lay awake and just moan or thrash about. At other times, he goes down to the beach and just roams around, wildly, purposelessly. And he's still wanting to do honor to Patroclus, anything he can do for Patroclus. So he sometimes will still hitch Hector's dead body up to his chariot, and he'll ride around the burial mound, dragging Patroclus's killer's body across the ground, as if to show Patroclus, see, I haven't forgotten you. I'm still doing everything I can to avenge your death. But it's all hollow. It's all meaningless now. Achilles is now, in his grief, excessive, just as he was with his wrath. He isn't going to move on. He's just not capable of it. He's going to keep up this grieving endlessly. And if that's all he was doing, then I suppose he'd have been left alone to waste the remainder of his life. But there's still the matter of Hector's body, which the pro-Trojan gods are still keeping protected from any decay or harm, so that for all the dragging Achilles has been doing to him, Hector still looks like he's just peacefully sleeping, perfectly clean, no bruises, no lacerations. And while the pro-Trojan gods had to accept the will of Zeus and the fate that led to Hector's death, they don't have to tolerate this continued desecration of his body and the continued denial of a funeral for Hector. Remember, in the ancient Greek religion, the spirit of the dead couldn't enter the underworld unless a proper funeral was held. And as the most prominent pro-Trojan god, Apollo is no longer willing to allow this situation to continue. For the resolution of the Iliad, the gods will have to intervene to stop Achilles' excessive grief. It will be a matter of the method of the gods' intervention and how hard they will push Achilles to release Hector's body that they must now decide. And so the scene now shifts to Olympus, where Apollo speaks out in anger to Zeus and the other gods about this continued desecration of Hector's corpse. Hard of heart are ye, O gods, and cruel. Hath Hector never burnt for you thigh bones of unblemished bulls and goats? Now have ye not taken heart to rescue even his corpse, for his wife to look upon, and his mother and his child, and his father Priam and his people, who speedily would burn him in the fire and make his funeral. But fell Achilles, O gods, ye are fain to abet, whose mind is nowise just, nor the purpose in his breast to be turned away. But he is cruelly minded as a lion that in great strength and at the bidding of his proud heart goeth forth against men's flocks to make his meal. Even thus Achilles hath cast out pity, neither hath he shame that doth both harm and profit men greatly. It must be that many a man loses even some dearer one than was this, a brother of the same womb born, or perchance a son, yet bringeth he his wailing and lamentation to an end. For an enduring soul have fates given unto men. But Achilles, after bereaving noble Hector of his life, bindeth him behind his horses, and draggeth him around the tomb of his dear comrade. Not verily is that more honorable or better for him. Let him take heed, lest we wax wroth with him, good man though he be, for in his fury he is entreating shamefully this senseless clay. Apollo is calling out Achilles, among the gods at least, for his excessive grieving, pointing out that other mortals have lost loved ones before and haven't resorted to this disgraceful behavior. And in fact, humans have been given an enduring soul just for the ability to handle the many griefs of life. And Apollo imagines that all the gods, not just him, will soon become angry with Achilles. He's mistaken on that, of course, as there are some very pro-Greek gods. Among them is Hera, always the most vocal of the pro-Greek gods, and she immediately objects to the idea that Hector and Achilles are at all equals, thus refuting Apollo's entire argument. Even thus mightest thou speak, O Lord of the silver bow, if ye are to give equal honor to Achilles and to Hector. Hector is but a mortal, and was suckled at a woman's breast, but Achilles is child of a goddess, whom I myself bred up and reared, and gave to a man to be his wife, even to Peleus, who is dearest of all men to the immortal's heart. And all ye gods came to her bridal, and thou among them wert feasting with thy lyre, O lover of ill company, faithless ever. Hera ends, characteristically, for she tends to be very confrontational, with an unnecessary insult, O lover of ill company, faithless ever. But mostly she's reminding Apollo that Achilles' mother is a goddess, and more specifically the goddess Thetis, whom she, Hera, helped raise. So in a sense, Hera feels like Achilles is her own grandson. Additionally, the marriage of Thetis and Achilles' father Peleus wasn't just any old marriage. It was one of those rare moments in mythology where all the gods were said to have gathered. Even you, Apollo! Hera feels that Apollo should feel more loyalty towards Achilles than Hector because of these family ties which link him closely to the Olympian family, unlike Hector, whose parents were both mortals, with no such close link to the gods. Zeus, however, wants a compromise between these two sides, and so he proposes, Hera, be not wroth utterly with the gods, for these men's honor is not to be the same, yet Hector also was dearest to the gods of all mortals that are in Ilios. So was he to me at least, for nowise failed he in the gifts I loved. Neither did my altar lack seemly feast, drink offering, and esteem of sacrifice, even the honor that falleth to our due. Nay, verily, we will suffer that they steal away brave Hector, yet cannot it be hidden from Achilles, for his mother abideth ever nigh to him night and day. But I were fain that some one of the gods would call Thetis to come near to me, that I may speak unto her a wise word, so that Achilles may take gifts from Priam and give Hector back. Zeus agrees with Hera that the honor of Achilles is indeed higher than that of Hector, but that Hector was his favorite mortal among the Trojans. Thus, Zeus sees the merit in both what Apollo and what Hera have said. In theory, Zeus is in favor of the simplest and most obvious solution, which would be to have one of the gods just go and take Hector's body away from Achilles and bring it to the Trojans so they can hold his funeral. Simple, easy. Throw your divine weight around and solve a problem. But Zeus doesn't like that solution because Achilles' divine mother Thetis is always watching over him. So she would see any of them coming if they tried to take the body sneakily or by force. Zeus always wants to maintain good relationships among the gods so they're happy with the current order. That's a big part of how he maintains his own supremacy. And Zeus knows that he'd never be able to repair his relationship with Thetis if he allowed any of the gods to take Hector from Achilles. Thetis is actually a really good goddess to have on your side. She's very loyal and always willing to go out on a limb to do favors for her friends. So Zeus feels it's worth going to a little extra trouble to keep Thetis happy. Zeus sends his messenger goddess Iris to ask Thetis to come up to Olympus and talk things over. And so, airy-footed Iris sped forth upon the errand, and between Samothrace and rocky Imbros, leapt into the Black Sea, and the waters closed above her with a noise. And she sped to the bottom like a weight of lead that mounted on horn of field ox goeth down, bearing death to ravenous fishes. And she found Thetis in a hollow cave. About her sat gathered other goddesses of the sea, and she in their midst was wailing for the fate of her noble son, who must perish in deep-soiled Troy, far from his native land. And standing near, fleet-footed Iris spake to her, Rise, Thetis, Zeus of immortal counsels calleth thee. And to her made answer Thetis, the silver-footed goddess, Wherefore biddeth me that mighty god? I shrink from mingling among the immortals, for I have countless woes at heart. Yet go I, nor shall his word be in vain, whatsoever he saith. Thus having said, the noble goddess took to her a dark-hued robe. No blacker raiment was there found than that. Then she went forth, and wind-footed swift Iris led the way before her, and around them the surge of the sea was sundered. And when they had come forth upon the shore, they sped up to heaven, and found the far-seeing son of Cronos, and round him sat gathered all the other blessed gods that are forever. Then she sat down beside Father Zeus, and Athene gave her place. And Hera set a fair golden cup in her hand, and cheered her with words. And Thetis drank, and gave back the cup. Then began speech to them the Father of gods and men. Thou art come to Olympus, divine Thetis, in thy sorrow, with violent grief at thy heart. I know it of myself. Nevertheless, will I tell thee wherefore I called thee hither. 9 days hath dispute arisen among the immortals concerning the corpse of Hector and Achilles, waster of cities. Fain are they to send clear-sighted Argeiphontes to steal the body away. But now hear what glory I accord herein to Achilles, that I may keep through times to come thy honor and goodwill. Go with all speed to the host, and bear to thy son my bidding. Say to him that the gods are displeased at him, and that I above all immortals am wroth, because with furious heart he holdeth Hector at the beaked ships, and hath not given him back, if haply he may fear me and give Hector back. But I will send Iris to great-hearted Priam, to bid him go to the ships of the Achaeans to ransom his dear son, and carry gifts to Achilles that may gladden his heart. Zeus wants Achilles to voluntarily give up the body of Hector, rather than let the gods steal it. And specifically, that thief would have been Hermes, the god of thieves, whom Zeus just now referred to as Argeiphontes, meaning the slayer of Argus, the 100-eyed giant that, you guessed it, Hermes slayed. Zeus's plan is to send Thetis to convince Achilles to give up Hector's body in exchange for a proper ransom, so that everyone, particularly the gods, can be happy, but that also Achilles' honor can be maintained, as he will be giving up Hector for treasure worth at least as much as the body of his enemy. Achilles is really getting 2 things in exchange for Hector's body. He's getting the ransom that Priam will bring. That's pretty standard, and until Patroclus was killed, Achilles had been as keen as anyone to accept ransoms for both living and dead foes. But Zeus is also giving Achilles the honor of not letting Apollo send Hermes to steal Hector's body away, because that's what would have happened if Zeus hadn't intervened here. Achilles would have been stolen from, and stolen loot equals stolen honor. It's a very materialistic society. Achilles would have been left with nothing. The gods don't have to respect the feelings of mortals, but in this case, Zeus is choosing to, or at least it's working out in a way that a mortal's feelings shouldn't be too hurt, while the gods are also happy with the outcome as well. Now, Zeus didn't really have to sell it this hard to Thetis. You'll remember, she'd already said to Iris that she would listen to and obey Zeus. Things are moving along pretty briskly here. Thetis now goes to her son to deliver Zeus's message. And Thetis was not disobedient to his word, and she sped, darting upon her way down from the peaks of Olympus. And she came to her son's hut. There found she him making grievous moan, and his dear comrades round were swiftly making ready and furnishing their early meal. And a sheep great and fleecy was being sacrificed in the hut. Then his lady mother sate her down close beside him, and stroked him with her hand, and spake to him by his name. My child, how long with lamentation and woe wilt thou devour thine heart, taking thought of neither food nor rest? Good were even a woman's embrace, for not long shalt thou be left alive to me. Already death and forceful fate are standing nigh thee. but hearken forthwith unto me, for I am the messenger of Zeus to thee. He saith that the gods are displeased at thee, and that himself above all immortals is wroth, because with furious heart thou holdest Hector at the beaked ships, and hast not given him back. But come, restore him, and take ransom for the dead. Then to her in answer spake fleet-footed Achilles, So be it. Whoso bringeth ransom, let him take back the dead, if verily with heart's intent the Olympian biddeth it himself. Well, that was easy. Achilles didn't give any pushback to his mother. He simply says whoever brings a ransom can have Hector's body, if that's what Zeus wants. Things really are moving along quickly toward the conclusion here, but we can maybe read a little into just how easily Achilles was convinced by his mother. He's sick of this. He's sick of this meaningless existence, the dragging Hector's body around, the moaning, the lamenting. But he's had no way out. He's a man of excess. He doesn't know how to say, okay, that's enough of that. He's Achilles. He's supposed to be the very most of everything. He fights the hardest. He loves the strongest. He grieves the longest. Besides, how could he stop any of this without implying to Patroclus that he doesn't care about him anymore? He does care, but he also knows that he can't go on like this forever. In the darkness that his life has become, his mother has offered a light and shown a way out. He takes it immediately and instinctively, an escape from the prison of his own heart. Meanwhile, back on Olympus, Zeus sets the other part of his plan in motion. This will initiate the first of the two journeys. This will be a literal journey, although it will also have an important metaphorical aspect that we'll also discuss. Zeus speaks again to the messenger goddess Iris. Go forth, fleet Iris, leave the abode of Olympus, and bear my message within Ilios to great-hearted Priam, that he go to the ships of the Achaeans and ransom his dear son, and carry gifts to Achilles that may gladden his heart. Let him go alone, and no other man of the Trojans go with him. Only let some elder herald attend on him, to guide the mules and the smooth-wheeled wagon, and carry back to the city the dead man whom noble Achilles slew. Let not death be in his thought, nor any fear. Such guide will we give unto him, even the slayer of Argus, who shall lead him until his leading bring him to Achilles. And when he shall have led him within the hut, neither Achilles himself slay him, nor suffer any other herein. For not senseless is he, or unforeseeing, or wicked, but with all courtesy will he spare a suppliant man. Zeus is sending Iris off now to King Priam of Troy, to set in motion the last great moment of the Iliad, which will be the encounter between Priam and Achilles. This is the first of the two journeys of Book 24, the more literal of the two. Priam will journey, as Zeus has commanded, alone, but for a single elderly wagon driver to confront Achilles, the killer of his son Hector, where Priam will beg for the return of his son's body. You might remember back in Book 22, when Hector had just been killed. Of course, all the Trojans were distraught, but Priam's first and strongest reaction was to run to Achilles, to beg for his son's body immediately. He couldn't stand the idea of his beloved son, the pride of their people, being so disgraced as to be dragged across the ground as Achilles did that day, and in fact has continued to do every day since. And Priam needs to honor his son with a proper funeral, just the same as Achilles needed to do for Patroclus. But back in Book 22, when Priam tried to run onto the battlefield to implore Achilles, he was stopped by his own people, who feared that they would lose their king as well, and despite being the king, he was too old and feeble to resist them, and so they talked what must have sounded to them like sense into him. But it never made sense to Priam's heart that his son would remain unburied, unhonored, his spirit wandering the earth forever. Zeus knows Iris's message to Priam is just what the old man wants and needs to hear, and there's no doubt how Priam will respond. Iris speeds off towards Troy. And she came to the house of Priam, and found therein crying and moan. His children sitting around their father within the court were bedewing their raiment with their tears, and the old man in their midst was close wrapped, all over in his cloak, and on his neck and head was much mire that he had gathered in his hands as he groveled upon the earth. And his daughters and his sons' wives were wailing throughout the house, bethinking them all of those valiant men who had lost their lives at the hands of the Argives and were lying low. And the messenger of Zeus stood beside Priam and spake softly unto him, and trembling came upon his limbs. Be of good cheer in thy heart, O Priam, son of Dardanos, and be not dismayed for anything, for no evil come I hither to forebode to thee, but with good will. I am the messenger of Zeus to thee, who, though he be afar off, hath great care and pity for thee. Iris repeats the rest of Zeus's message to Priam, that he's to bring a ransom to Achilles for his son's body, that he's to go alone except for an elderly man to help manage the cart that will be used to carry the ransom to Achilles and Hector's body home, and that Priam won't need to fear Achilles since he's coming as a suppliant. Now Priam orders his sons to get a mule and a cart ready, and goes off to gather treasure to use as a ransom. In the treasure room of all places, for some reason, Priam finds his wife, Hecabe, and says to her, Lady, from Zeus hath an Olympian messenger come to me, that I go to the ships of the Achaeans and ransom my dear son, and carry gifts to Achilles that may gladden his heart. Come tell me how seemeth it to thy mind, for of myself at least my desire and heart bid me mightily to go thither, to the ships, and enter the wide camp of the Achaeans. Thus spake he, but his wife lamented aloud, and made answer unto him, Woe is me! Whither is gone thy mind, whereby aforetime thou wert famous among stranger men, and among them thou rulest? How art thou fain to go alone to the ships of the Achaeans, to meet the eyes of the man who hath slain full many of thy brave sons? Of iron verily is thy heart. For if he light on thee and behold thee with his eyes, a savage and ill-trusted man is this, and he will not pity thee, neither reverence thee at all. Nay, nay, now let us sit in the hall and make lament afar off. Even thus did forceful fate erst spin for Hector with her thread at his beginning, when I bare him, even I, that he should glut fleet-footed dogs, far from his parents, in the dwelling of a violent man, whose inmost vitals I were fain to fasten upon and feed upon. Then would his deeds against my son be paid again to him. For not playing the coward was he slain of him, but championing the men and deep-bosomed women of Troy. Neither bethought he him of shelter or of flight. Hecabe clearly does not want Priam to go. She does not understand how he could possibly look into his son's killer's eyes. And she says Priam must have a heart of iron. Plus, she's just afraid that Achilles will outright kill Priam. Now, this is more of the talking sense that Priam heard on the day his son died, and he's not going to listen to it anymore. But Hecabe, you noticed, she went even further. She got really dark. She thinks it was Hector's fate. She thinks that it had been his fate since she first gave birth to him, that he would end up like this, parted from them and as food for dogs. And then she got really gross and really grim. She went overboard. She expressed the desire to eat Achilles' internal organs because that's what she thinks he deserves. All this anger, but actually all she wants to do is lament there in their own halls. Priam, let's just go back to just crying together. Sitting still is not something that Priam can tolerate any longer. He needs to save his son. Priam refutes all of Hecabe's arguments, the reasonable and the crazy. Then to her in answer spake the old man, godlike Priam, Stay me not, for I am fain to go. Neither be thyself a bird of ill boding in my halls, for thou wilt not change my mind. Were it some other and a child of earth that bade me this, whether some seer or of the priests that divine from sacrifice, then would we declare it false and have no part therein. But now, see, I have heard the voice of the goddess myself and looked upon her face. I will go forth, and her word shall not be void. And if it be my fate to die by the ships of the mail-clad Achaeans, so would I have it. Let Achilles slay me with all speed, when once I have taken in my arms my son, and have satisfied my desire with moan. Priam is having none of it. He has been fixated on recovering his son's body since it was taken away from them on that horrible day when Hector and Achilles fought before the walls of Troy. And now that Priam has a chance, a divinely granted chance to get Hector back so he can hold a funeral and allow his son's spirit to enter through the underworld and rest, Priam is going to take it. Priam is getting angry with his wife's unwillingness to help, with the uselessness of his family, and we will soon see more of Priam's anger as he confronts his surviving sons, the ones that just don't measure up to Hector. Priam now gathers the treasure he's going to offer in ransom. Here's the list: 12 women's robes, 12 cloaks, 12 covers, 12 sheets, 10 talents of gold, 2 tripods, 4 cauldrons, and a goblet he got from Thrace. And there must have been some folks standing around him as he's gathering all this, because he lashes out now and tells all these folks to get away from him. Begone, ye that dishonor and do me shame. Have ye no mourning of your own at home, that ye come to vex me here? Think ye it a small thing that Zeus, Cronos' son, hath given me this sorrow, to lose him that was the best man of my sons? Nay, but ye too shall feel it. For easier far shall ye be to the Achaeans to slay, now he is dead. But for me, ere I behold with mine eyes the city sacked and wasted, let me go down into the house of Hades. Now Priam goes and finds those living sons of his whom he'd earlier ordered to get a mule and cart ready. Famously, Priam originally had 50 sons, but now he only has these 9 left, and he's not happy with any of them. These are the ones who survived the war thus far by being unwarlike, those who fall short of the mark that Hector had set. Paris, Helenos, Agathon, Pamon, Antiphonos, Polites, Deiphobos, Hippothous, and Dios. Out of these 9, there are only 3 names that I know anything about. Paris, who caused this war, Helenos the seer, and Deiphobos, the one whom Athene appeared as to Hector in order to trick him into facing Achilles. Hector had been surprised to see Deiphobos on the battlefield, as well he might. Fun fact, Deiphobos goes on to marry Helen after Paris dies. He won't hang on to her for long, though. Menelaus takes care of him real quick. You can read about that encounter in the Post-Homerica. In anger, Priam shouts at his remaining sons, "Haste ye, ill sons, my shame! Would that ye all in Hector's stead had been slain at the swift ships. Woe is me, all unblessed, since I begat sons, the best men in wide Troyland, but none of them is left for me to claim, neither godlike Mestor, nor Troilos with his chariot of war, nor Hector, who was a god among men. Neither seemed he as the son of a mortal man, but of a god. And all these hath Ares slain. And here are my shames all left to me. False-tongued, light-heeled, the heroes of the dance, plunderers of your own people's sheep and kids. Will ye not make me ready a wain with all speed, and lay all these thereon, that we thus get forward on our way?" His sons hurry and get the cart ready and load it up with all the treasure. Now Hecabe appears again, apparently having come to accept that Priam is going to meet Achilles. Hecabe, at least, wants Priam to do things the right way by making a proper offering to Zeus to ensure his safety on this dangerous mission. Hecabe offers Priam a cup of wine and says to him, "Lo, now make libation to Father Zeus, and pray that thou mayest come back home from among the enemy, since thy heart speedeth thee forth to the ships, though fain were I thou wentest not. And next pray to Cronion of the storm cloud, the god of Ida, that beholdeth all Troy land beneath, and ask of him a bird of omen, even the swift messenger that is dearest of all birds to him, and of mightiest strength, to appear upon thy right, that seeing the sign with thine own eyes, thou mayest go in trust thereunto the ships of the fleet horse Danaans. But if far-seeing Zeus shall not grant unto thee his messenger, I at least shall not bid thee on to go among the ships of the Achaeans, how fain soever thou mayest be. Then answered and spake unto her godlike Priam, Lady, I will not disregard this behest of thine, for it is good to lift up hands to Zeus, if haply he will have pity. Priam is okay with this, with Hecate having him pause to make an offering to Zeus. She's no longer trying to stop him, she's trying to help him. She will now only object to his going if Zeus fails to send a sign that Priam will be safe. So next we'll see the purification ritual. It was important to be clean before making an offering to the gods. Thus spake the old man, and bade a house dame that served him pour pure water on his hands, for she stood near to him to serve him with water in a ewer to wash withal. And when he had washed his hands, he took a goblet from his wife. Then he stood in the midst of the court and prayed, and poured forth wine as he looked up to heaven, and spake a word aloud. Father Zeus, that bearest sway from Ida, most glorious and most great, grant that I find welcome and pity under Achilles' roof, and send a bird of omen, even the swift messenger that is dearest of all birds to thee and of mightiest strength, to appear upon the right, that seeing this sign with mine own eyes, I may go trusting therein unto the ships of the fleet horse Danaans. Having purified himself and made an offering of wine to Zeus, Priam ended by asking Zeus for a sign that he'll be successful on his mission. Religion was very transactional. The gods were not a source of wisdom or love or comfort. They provided needed things in exchange for offerings made in the correct way. And frankly, Priam is scared. Was he dreaming that Iris came and told him to go to Achilles? A sign right now would be very reassuring. Thus spake Priam, praying. And Zeus of wise counsel hearkened unto him, and straightway sent forth an eagle, surest omen of winged birds, the dusky hunter called of men the black eagle. Wide is the door, well locking, fitted close, of some rich man's high-roofed hall, so wide were his wings either way. And he appeared to them, speeding on the right hand above the city. And when they saw the eagle, they rejoiced all, and all their hearts were glad within their breasts. Hecate was helpful after all. By making the proper offering of wine to Zeus, they were given a clear sign that Priam would be successful. The eagle is the bird of Zeus. Its appearance an indication that Zeus has heard and granted their prayer for Priam's safety on this mission. Priam now mounts the cart and leaves with his old charioteer Idaeus, likely as old as he is, driving the mule-pulled cart. Following them through the city were Priam's various family members, the 9 lousy sons left to him, the wives and widows of his sons, both living and dead, and his daughters and their husbands. Through the gate and down onto the plain, they followed Priam in his mule cart, weeping and wailing as though they expected the king to die on this mission. It almost seems as if Priam is the guest of honor at a funeral procession. That he might die today would have been a reasonable belief for them. Achilles has shown no mercy since his return to battle after the death of Patroclus, nor respect for the old customs, which might have meant safety for an unarmed ambassador and a welcome for one offering a hefty ransom for the body of a deceased captive. Still, didn't they see the eagle? Zeus is looking out for Priam. We zoom up to Olympus now, where Zeus turns to Hermes and says, Hermes, since unto thee especially is it dear to companion men, and thou hearest whomsoever thou wilt, go forth and guide Priam to the hollow ships of the Achaeans, that no man behold or be aware of him among all the Danaans' host, until he come to the son of Peleus. I want to take just a moment to explain why Zeus turns to Hermes now, because we've seen very little of Hermes in the Iliad. In fact, the only time he's appeared was in Book 21, the Duels of the Gods, when Hermes declined to fight Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. Thus, we can deduce that Hermes was nominally on the pro-Greek side, but not firmly enough on its side to have made any but the most brief and non-committal stance on the Greeks' behalf. And yet here now Hermes is being asked to escort the Trojan king and to protect him from the Greeks. So why Hermes? He'd been mentioned earlier here in Book 24, but that was when the gods were considering stealing the body of Hector away from Achilles, and Hermes as the god of thieves made sense then. So why are we still involving Hermes in this final chapter of the Iliad? Because Hermes, in addition to his many other roles, such as he's the herald of Olympus, he is, as we said, the god of thieves and of merchants, he's the god of travelers, he represents fertility, but Hermes was also very, very importantly, the psychopomp. That's a great word, which means he was the escort of the dead. One of Hermes' most iconic roles was to escort the souls of the newly deceased to the underworld. And this is something of what's happening now to Priam. He's going into the realm of death, his son Hector's death. He's seeking to recover Hector's body so that it can be properly buried. And once that's taken place, Hermes will then escort Hector to the underworld. Now, that Priam himself is undergoing a metaphorical journey right now to the underworld is made explicit in the following passage, which recounts a specific portion of the literal journey that Priam and his mule cart driver undergo as they go from Troy to the Greek camp. Listen to this. Now, when they had driven beyond the great barrow of Elos, they halted the mules and horses at the river to drink, for darkness was come down over the earth. Then the herald beheld Hermes from hard by, and marked him, and spake and said to Priam, Consider, son of Dardanos, this is matter of prudent thought. I see a man. Methinks we shall full soon be rent in pieces. Come, let us flee in our chariot, or else at least touch his knees and entreat him that he have mercy on us. The old charioteer Idaeus has spotted someone out here on this dark night on the midst of what has regularly been a battlefield for the past 10 years. And Idaeus, as an old man himself, accompanied only by another very old man, King Priam, Idaeus is frightened. Maybe this is a bandit we see here. Maybe he's a murderer. Idaeus wants to either try outrunning this young man, not likely in a mule cart that half the city of Troy was able to keep pace with while sobbing, or Idaeus' other plan is to preemptively beg this young man for mercy. Just assume that he's here to rob us and lead off with, hey, young man, please don't kill us. But look, this little paragraph that we just read about their journey is jam-packed with symbolic imagery. Let's unpack it. In his paper titled Priam's Catabasis, Traces of the Epic Journey to Hades in Iliad 24, author Miguel Herrero de Jaregui argues that this passage, which is subsequently recounted in reverse upon Priam's return trip, holds all three essential elements of a journey to the underworld, which are 1. Nightfall, 2. The crossing of a river, which in this case is symbolic of the actual river Styx that the deceased must cross, and 3. The presence of Hermes. These three images in rapid succession here would have signaled quite clearly to the original audience of the Iliad that Priam was entering the underworld, at least symbolically. And I'll even add a reminder that he had been surrounded by mourners just now as he was exiting the city. But that this young man, whom Idaeus wants to run from or beg for mercy in his terror, is actually Hermes, is not yet known to Priam and Idaeus. All they see is a young man who has been described as so young, he's only just now beginning to show the first signs of growing a beard. Now, I've had a lot to say throughout our exploration of the Iliad about the disguises of the gods, how various their purposes have seemed to be. Often, these divine disguises are seemingly pointless. Sometimes they're very easily seen through, sometimes not, but pointless all the same. In the case of Athene's disguise, when she appeared to Hector in the form of his brother Deiphobos, the divine disguise was cruel. But Hermes' disguise here is a real meta disguise moment. Author Warren Smith, in his paper The Disguises of the Gods in the Iliad, points out that up until the formalizing of the Iliad text, Hermes had always been depicted in art as a fully adult, bearded man, a full-on adult man, not a youth such as now appears to Priam and Idaeus. So we have to assume that Hermes' appearance as a youth here in the Iliad, which has been so full of divine disguises up until this point, is itself a disguise. He's appearing to Priam and Idaeus as a young man to shield his identity from them. They don't recognize him as Hermes right now. And yet, here's the meta part. With the popularity of the Iliad from the mid-5th century onward, Hermes' appearance in art shifted. And from that time onward, he was depicted in art as a beardless youth. The disguise became Hermes' identity. I really wanted to share this with you. There's been so much about divine disguises throughout the Iliad, and this being, sadly, our very last one, I loved learning just how unique and lastingly influential this final divine disguise became. Priam neither orders Idaeus to flee, nor does he beg this youth for mercy. Priam simply freezes in terror. The hairs on his arms all stand up. Hermes, however, does not leave Priam in this state for long. Instead, he speaks calmly to the old king, as though he was just another traveler out and about on this fine night. Whither, father, dost thou thus guide these horses and mules through the divine night, when other mortals are asleep? Hadst thou no fear of the fierce-breathing Achaeans, thy bitter foes that are hard anigh thee? If one of them should espy thee carrying such treasures through the swift black night, what then would be thy thought? Neither art thou young thyself, and thy companion here is old, that ye should make a defense against a man that should assail thee first. But I will nowise harm thee, yea, I will keep any other from thy hurt, for the similitude of my dear father I see in thee. This is an eerie scene. There shouldn't be any travelers out and about, not here and not now. The city is just atop the hill behind them, and it's been besieged by the Greeks encamped by the sea right ahead of them for 10 long years now. This field has been the site of numerous battles recently. And even if a traveler here at night made any sense, that someone traveling right next to Troy wouldn't recognize Priam, the longtime king of Troy, is completely beyond belief. Moreover, this traveler makes no account of himself, at least not yet, and he somehow knows about the load of treasure. Now, it wasn't specified that the treasure had been covered, but even in their haste, it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't have thrown some old piece of cloth or something over the treasure simply as a precaution, just to keep light from glinting off the gold. But this is also a sweet scene, despite the warning bells that should be going off in Priam's head. This unidentified young man, whom we know is Hermes, he simply offers to help Priam because Priam reminds him of his own father. Hermes is really leaning into his disguise, really acting his divine heart out here. And I'm sure it's calmed the two old men. And I'll also ask you to just remember for now that really important final line that Hermes said about Priam reminding him of his own father, because being reminded of one's father will become very important before we're done with the Iliad. Now, whatever Priam thinks is going on here, if he doubts this young man or not, he goes along with it. He chooses to go along with it and responds to the youth, "Even so, kind son, are all these things as thou sayest. Nevertheless, hath some god stretched forth his hand even over me, in that he hath sent a wayfarer such as thou to meet me, a bearer of good luck, by the nobleness of thy form and semblance. And thou art wise of heart, and of blessed parents art thou sprung." That was the right thing for Priam to say, complimenting Hermes and his parents. And now Hermes and Priam have a lengthy exchange, which it's well worth our time to listen to. It becomes clear over the course of this exchange that this mysterious youth, while keeping his identity a secret from Priam, knows more of what's going on than he let on at first. Priam becomes a little suspicious, but Hermes sticks to his disguise and builds up his own fictional backstory in such a cunning way as to draw Priam in with the lure of insider information about the state of Achilles' own portion of the Greek camp. This tactic, drawing a listener in with a fascinating story, is one we'll see Odysseus use in the Odyssey, and I have to imagine it's something that would have been in the minds of the bards who composed these epics. In a way, it was their own personal superpower that we're still subject to millennia later. Hermes begins this exchange by responding to Priam's recent courteous compliments of himself and his parents. All this, old sire, hast thou verily spoken aright. But come say this, and tell me truly, whether thou art taking forth a great and goodly treasure unto alien men, where it may abide for thee in safety, or whether by this ye are forsaking holy Ilios in fear. So far the best man among you hath perished, even thy son, for of battle with the Achaeans abated he never a jot. And to him in answer spake the old man, godlike Priam, Who art thou, noble sir? And of whom art thou born? For meetly hast thou spoken of the fate of my hapless son. So we can already see that this young stranger not only knew Priam and Idaeus were carrying treasure, and that Hector, the great defender of Troy, has died, but he also recognizes Priam as Hector's father. So Priam's doubtful. He questions this young man, Who are you? Because if you know all this, then you're likely a Trojan. But I know everyone in Troy, and I certainly don't recognize you. Hermes is going to spin a tale here and give Priam a whole false identity. Their verbal sparring continues with Hermes' response. And again to him spake the messenger, the slayer of Argus. Thou art proving me, old sire, in asking me of noble Hector. Him have I full oft seen with mine eyes in glorious battle, and when at the ships he was slaying the Argives he drave thither, piercing them with the keen bronze. And we stood still and marveled thereat, for Achilles suffered us not to fight, being wroth against Atreus' son. His squire am I, and came in the same well-wrought ship. From the Myrmidons I come, and my father is Polyctor. Wealthy is he, and an old man even as thou, and 6 other sons hath he, and I am his 7th. With the others I cast lots, and it fell to me to fare hither with the host. And now am I come from the ships to the plain, for at daybreak the glancing-eyed Achaeans will set the battle in array around the town. For it chafeth them to be sitting there, nor can the Achaean lords hold in their fury for the fray. And the old man, godlike Priam, answered him, saying, If verily thou art a squire of Achilles, Peleus' son, come tell me all the truth, whether still my son is by the ships, or whether ere now Achilles hath riven him limb from limb, and cast him to the dogs. Hermes has fabricated an entire false identity for himself, giving his father's name, claiming to be a Myrmidon and a squire specifically of Achilles. Of note, Hermes does not give himself a name, and I'm not entirely sure why. I don't think there's any particular reason why he couldn't have, and in fact we see in the Odyssey that Athene gives her false identity a false name as well. She goes by the name Mentor, who had been a real person, a friend of Odysseus, whom he'd left in charge of helping raise his son Telemachus. Athene assumed Mentor's identity and mentored Telemachus, hence the term we have now. This role was expanded upon in a book titled The Adventures of Telemachus, which was published in 1699 and features a lot more of Telemachus being mentored by Mentor. I've read it in my ongoing effort to read everything related to the classics, and this is obviously far removed from actual classics by its date, and it's kind of dry and preachy, so it's not among my highest recommendations, but I'll put a link in the show notes to it if you'd like to check it out. Now, Hermes' identity, despite not having given himself a name, it's a genius story for a couple of reasons. For one, he's pulled at Priam's heartstrings by claiming to be of son of a father just like Priam, an old man who's had many sons, and this young man has been sent off to war just like Priam's sons have. But the other really smart move here is to claim to come not just from the Greek camp, which would have been enough by itself to explain how Hermes recognizes Priam, but specifically to have claimed to be a squire of Achilles. How lucky am I? Priam must be thinking. I've got this inside scoop into what's going on with Achilles, the very person I'm going to see right now. This is irresistible to Priam. He's drawn into Hermes' story. He has to know more from him. Any doubts he had will be quelled, at least temporarily, with the temptation of getting inside info about Achilles from this very likable young man. Then to him again spake the messenger, the slayer of Argus. Old sire, not yet have dogs or birds devoured him, but there lieth he still by Achilles' ship, even as he fell among the huts. And the 12th morn now hath risen upon him, nor doth his flesh corrupt at all. Neither worms consume it, such as devour men slain in war. Truly Achilles draggeth him recklessly about the barrow of his dear comrade, so oft as divine day dawneth, yet marreth he him not. Thou wouldst marvel if thou couldst go see thyself how dewy fresh he lieth, and is washed clean of blood, nor anywhere defiled, and all his wounds wherewith he was stricken are closed. Howbeit many plunged their points in him. So careful are the blessed gods of thy son, though he be but a dead corpse, for they held him dear at heart. To learn that his son's body has not been eaten by the dogs, and in fact is still complete and undefiled, despite Achilles' attempts, is far more than Priam had ever hoped for. Priam is overjoyed at this news, and he wants to offer this young man a reward for his assistance. Thus spake he, and the old man rejoiced and answered him, saying, My son, it is verily a good thing to give due offerings withal to the immortals, for never did my child, if that child indeed I had, forgot in our halls the gods who inhabit Olympus. Therefore have they remembered this for him, albeit his portion is death. But come now, take from me this goodly goblet, and guard me myself and guide me under heaven, that I may come unto the hut of Peleus' son. Then spake unto him again the messenger of the slayer of Argus. Thou art proving me, old sire, who am younger than thou, but thou wilt not prevail upon me in that thou biddest me take gifts from thee without Achilles' privity. I were afraid and shamed at heart to defraud him, lest some evil come to pass on me hereafter. But as thy guide I will go even unto famous Argos, accompanying thee courteously in the swift ship or on foot. Not from scorn of thy guide would any assail thee then. Hermes has declined Priam's offer of the golden goblet in payment for his assistance. Hermes will escort Priam for free, ostensibly just because the old man reminds him of his own father. Author Dijarige, in his work previously mentioned, draws the same conclusion that you likely have, which is that Priam's offer is similar to the payment of 2 obols to Charon for crossing the river Styx. But of course, Hermes and Charon play different and distinct roles in the passage of the dead into the underworld. Charon takes payment for his services, Hermes does not. My own reading of this is that Hermes is telling the truth here, that he really doesn't want to disrespect Achilles by tapping into the ransom that is Achilles' due. And this is an instance of the divine disguise and the divine reality coinciding. Hermes now joins the men on the cart and takes over from Idaeus as the driver, lashing the mules to drive faster. They quickly now approach the Greek camp, which is here described as having towers and trench, which must have somehow been restored from their recent devastation by Apollo. Hermes suddenly casts sleep over the Greek guards and opens the gate himself, allowing Priam's cart to simply drive straight into the Greek camp and right up to the portion of the camp where Achilles' huts are, which, as you'll remember, are on the far right if you're viewing the camp from the sea. But since Priam was coming in from the landward side, they now drive to the left side of the camp. Hermes brings Priam and his cart right up to the camp of Achilles within the larger Greek camp. Here there is another wall and another gate, which Hermes now also opens. And then Hermes says something surprising to Priam. Old sire, I that have come to thee am an immortal god, even Hermes, for my father sent me to companion thee on thy way. But now will I depart from thee, nor come within Achilles' sight. It were cause of wrath that an immortal god should thus show favor openly unto mortals. But thou go in and clasp the knees of Peleus' son, and entreat him for his father's sake and his mother's of the lovely hair, and for his child's sake, that thou mayest move his soul. Hermes has revealed his disguise to Priam. This is another way this particular example of divine disguise is very different from most of them we've seen, where either the human deduces that they've just encountered a god because of what they feel after the encounter, or the god does something dramatic to reveal themselves, like when Poseidon had appeared to Agamemnon as an old man, but then shouted incredibly loudly and went zooming off into the distance, clearly not an old man. Here, Hermes simply respects Priam and tells him his identity. This must give Priam the peace of mind to know with certainty that the gods are supporting him on this mission, so that his return is guaranteed. This allows Priam to focus on the other seemingly impossible task. Getting here was part one. Next, he has to convince Achilles to return his son's body. And Hermes has given Priam instructions on exactly how to proceed with convincing Achilles to do this. Recommends that he appeals to Achilles' sense of family, remind Achilles of his own father, his own mother, and his own son, Neoptolemus, whom we haven't met in the Iliad, but this is another person that you can read more about if you check out the Post-Homerica. Now Priam boldly strides into Achilles' hut. Inside are only 3 men, Achilles sitting by himself, and Automedon and Alkimos sitting apart at some distance away from Achilles. All 3 are resting now, having finished their dinner recently. In an incident very similar to one in the Odyssey, in which Odysseus begs for assistance from another noble person, Priam now also remains invisible, or at least somehow unnoticed by everyone upon his initial entry into the hut. Hermes' protection over Priam shields any of them from seeing Priam right up until the moment Priam reaches Achilles and clasps Achilles' knees in the ancient manner of supplication, of begging for help. Just like with Odysseus, it's only in this moment when Priam is already a suppliant and therefore already has the cultural protection of one begging for mercy that Achilles and the other men suddenly become aware of him. And as when a grievous curse cometh upon a man who in his own country hath slain another and escapeth to a land of strangers, to the house of some rich man, and wonder possesses them that look on him. So Achilles wondered when he saw godlike Priam, and the rest wondered likewise, and looked upon one another. Then Priam spake and entreated him, saying, Bethink thee, O Achilles, like to gods, of thy father, that is of like years with me, on the grievous pathway of old age. Him haply are the dwellers round about entreating evilly, nor is there any to ward from him ruin and bane. Nevertheless, while he heareth of thee, as yet alive, he rejoiceth in his heart, and hopeth withal day after day that he shall see his dear son returning from Troyland. But I am utterly unblessed, since I begat sons the best men in wide Troyland, but declare unto thee that none of them is left. 50 I had, when the sons of the Achaeans came. 19 were born to me of one mother, and concubines bear the rest within my halls. Now of the more part had impetuous Ares unstrung the knees. And he who was yet left and guarded city and men, him thou slewest, but now, as he fought for his country, even Hector. For his sake come I unto the ships of the Achaeans, that I may win him back from thee, and I bring with me untold ransom. Yea, fear thou the gods, Achilles, and have compassion on me, even me, bethinking thee of thy father. Lo, I am yet more piteous than he, and have braved what none other man on earth hath braved before, to stretch forth my hand toward the face of the slayer of my sons. Priam has obeyed Hermes' suggestion to appeal to Achilles' sense of family, but really Priam pared it down to the single most effective part of Hermes' suggestion, the appeal to Achilles' memory of his own father. Priam had been reminded of this father-son bond by Hermes' appearance as a young man, and Priam must know that his own appearance must be not unlike what Achilles' own father would look like now, bent with age, a once great man, brought low and no longer capable of the glorious deeds of youth, which are so much of what their culture celebrated. Priam's arguments are simple. 1. I am like your father and yet worse off, because your father, even if he is facing troubles with his neighbors, can still hope for your return. But I no longer have that hope, since my great son Hector is dead. 2. I've brought a great ransom to offer you, so you won't lose any honor in the exchange. And 3. Not only am I worse off than your father, but in coming to face you man to man, I have done something braver than anything anyone has ever before done. I am begging the killer of my son for compassion. So now we have the second man who is about to go on a journey here in Book 24. And this is, of course, Achilles. But unlike Priam's journey, which has a literal as well as a metaphorical aspect, Achilles' journey is purely metaphorical. That it is a journey is important to understanding the destination that Achilles will reach by the end of the Iliad, which is rapidly approaching. Priam is raising in Achilles' mind and heart memories of his own father, old Peleus, whom he wanted to make so proud. But now Achilles knows he will never see Peleus again. Achilles knows he will die in this war. Can Peleus be proud of him? Can Achilles make peace with his father, knowing that he'll never be able to show Peleus all the things he's looted, or tell him about all of his brave exploits in the war? Metaphorically, Achilles will journey now, tonight, to see his own father by witnessing the care and devotion that Priam is showing for his own son through coming here to face his son's killer. So for this final stretch of Book 24, we're going to pay special attention to how Achilles and Priam interact in light of the fact that here we have a father without his son and a son without his father. Priam's arguments, his appeal to Achilles' love for his own father, and Priam's appearance as an old father himself, all do seem to have an effect and stirred within Achilles desire to make lament for his father. And he touched the old man's hand and gently moved him back. And as they both bethought them of their dead, so Priam for manslaying Hector wept sore as he was fallen before Achilles' feet. And Achilles wept for his own father, and now again for Patroclus, and their moan went up throughout the house. But when noble Achilles had satisfied him with lament, and the desire thereof departed from his heart and limbs, straightway he sprang from his seat, and raised the old man by his hand, pitying his hoary head and hoary beard, and spake unto him winged words, and said, Ah, hapless! Many ill things verily thou hast endured in thy heart. How durst thou come alone to the ships of the Achaeans, and to meet the eyes of the man who hath slain full many of thy brave sons? Of iron verily is thy heart. But come then, set thee on a seat, and we will let our sorrows lie quiet in our hearts, for all our pain, for no avail cometh of it chill lament. This is the lot the gods have spun for miserable men, that they should live in pain, yet themselves are sorrowless. For 2 urns stand upon the floor of Zeus, filled with his evil gifts, and one with blessings. To whomsoever Zeus, whose joy is in the lightning, dealeth a mingled lot, that man chanteth now upon ill, and now again on good. But to whom he giveth but of the bad kind, him he bringeth to scorn, and evil famine chaseth him over the goodly earth, and he is a wanderer honored of neither gods nor men. Even thus to Peleus gave the gods splendid gifts from his birth, for he excelled all men in good fortune and wealth, and was king of the Myrmidons, and mortal though he was, the gods gave him a goddess to be his bride. Yet even on him God brought evil, seeing that there arose to him no offspring of princely sons in his halls, save that he begot one son to an untimely death. Neither may I tend him as he groweth old, since very far away from my country am I dwelling in Troyland, to vex thee and thy children. And of thee, old sire, we have heard how of old time thou wert happy, even how of all that Lesbos seed of Makar, boundeth to the north thereof, and Phrygia farther up, and the vast Hellespont. Of all these folk, men say, thou wert the richest in wealth and in sons. But after that the powers of heaven brought this bane on thee. Ever are battles and manslayings around thy city. Keep courage, and lament not unabatingly in thy heart. For nothing wilt thou avail by grieving for thy son, neither shalt thou bring him back to life, or ever some new evil come upon thee. Hermes' plan and Priam's execution of it went perfectly. Achilles has been reminded of his own father and how he is alone now, without his son there to help him in his old age. Heartstrings have been pulled. Priam's argument is that Achilles' father is better off than he is, because he still hears word of his son yet living. But Achilles knows that he is fated to die in this war, and so Peleus really is no better off than Priam. But Achilles as yet doesn't want to do anything. Like Hecate earlier, he still just wants to grieve. Achilles doesn't address Priam's request for the release of Hector's body. If anything, the plan has worked a little too well. Achilles sees in Priam someone he can grieve with, and they can just be together in their losses. As before, Priam is not going to tolerate any more inaction when it comes to rescuing his son. But before we move on, let's just take a moment to parse Achilles' parable of the 2 jars of Zeus that he's given here. Understanding this parable will be very important to understanding the peace that Achilles comes to in his own mind by the end of this book. He's not quite there yet, but this parable, in addition to witnessing Achilles' own feelings about his father, is his and our gateway to getting there. The text is not as clear as it could be on this matter. So here's the parable. We are to envision Zeus with 2 jars, one full of good stuff and one full of bad stuff. And as the master of men's fates, being the father of the fates after all, Zeus has the power to give humans what he wants out of these 2 jars. But here's the subtle part that I want to draw your attention to. Zeus sometimes gives humans a mixture from the 2 jars. So in your life, you might get some good stuff and some bad stuff. Or Zeus will give a specific person only stuff from the bad jar. He never gives anyone a lifetime of only stuff from the good jar. It would have been clearer if Zeus had had a mixed jar and a bad jar. That would have been simpler, right? So Achilles is envisioning that we can either have a life of mixed blessings or no blessings at all, but never a purely blessed life. This is his understanding of life, and he's reflecting on how mixed his own father's life was. No one had been more blessed than Peleus, who was given an immortal goddess as a wife, and the greatest warrior ever as a son. And yet now Achilles knows that Peleus will end his days alone, elderly, and grieving for his son, who will soon have died in a faraway land. Keep this parable and Achilles' application to his father's life in mind as we go forward. As before, Priam is not content with further inaction. He won't take Achilles' advice and have a seat. And he's not going to simply say, oh well, I had my share of stuff from the good jar in life. Guess it's bad jar time for the rest of my life now. Thanks anyway, I'll head on back to Troy without my dead son's body after coming all this way. Priam is here on a mission, and he reiterates what he's asking of Achilles. Bid me not to a seat, O fosterling of Zeus, so long as Hector lieth uncared for at the huts, but straightway give him back, that I may behold him with mine eyes, and accept thou the great ransom that we bring. So mayest thou have pleasure thereof, and come unto thy native land, since thou hast spared me from the first. But Achilles is not to be commanded about, and frowns, responding. No longer chafe me, old sire. Of myself am I minded to give Hector back to thee. For there came to me a messenger from Zeus, even my mother who bare me, daughter of the ancient one of the sea. And I know, O Priam, in thy mind, nor am unaware that some god it is that hath guided thee to the swift ships of the Achaeans. For no mortal man, even though in the prime of youth, would dare to come among the host, for neither could he escape the watch, nor easily thrust back the bolt of our doors. Therefore now stir my heart no more amid my troubles, lest I leave not even thee in peace, old sire, within my hut, albeit thou art my suppliant, and lest I transgress the commandment of Zeus. Thus spake he, and the old man feared and obeyed his word. Priam's mission comes perilously close to failing at this point. His impatience may have just pushed Achilles over the edge. Achilles calls out the obvious. You obviously came here with divine help. And he admits that he's been commanded by Zeus via his divine mother to release Hector's body. But what's worse for Priam's case is that Achilles calls out Priam for intentionally stirring up his grief, so he'll comply with the request to release Hector. But I want to draw your attention again to the very first sentence of Achilles' speech, where I see that he's of two minds, but in a very subtle way. No longer chafe me, old sire. Of myself am I minded to give Hector back to thee. For there came to me a messenger of Zeus, even my mother who bare me, daughter of the ancient one of the sea. We're going to really dig into the details of Achilles' mind and emotions here, because this is where the Iliad has its climax. This is where the resolution arises, right here in this conflict happening within Achilles' mind right now. His two thoughts are, one, I am minded to give Hector back. And two, there came to me a messenger from Zeus telling me to give Hector back. Now, these both sound like they would result in the same thing, so where's the conflict? Achilles wants to give Hector back on his own, independently of being ordered to do so by Zeus via his mother, or even by the emotional manipulation of Priam. Why does it matter? Because Achilles is Achilles. He wants to be seen as independent. He wants to feel that he makes his own decisions. He believes he does things because he wants to, not because he is forced. But he's been mistaken about this all along. It didn't take fate or the gods to dominate Achilles. He's been letting his own emotions rule him this whole time. Remember when Agamemnon forced Achilles to do something? Forced him to give up the woman Briseis? That was in book 1, and he resisted. Achilles hated Agamemnon with all his being, sat out the war, let innumerable Greeks die, and didn't care a bit until Patroclus was one of them. And yet, when it suited him, once Patroclus was gone and his reason for being angry with Agamemnon was overshadowed by his need to avenge Patroclus, Achilles restored his relationship with Agamemnon as if nothing had happened. And the woman Briseis that Agamemnon had taken and then given back to Achilles, we hardly see them interacting ever again. She wasn't ever that important to Achilles. It was the being forced to give her up that caused Achilles to react with such famous and overwhelming wrath. Achilles doesn't want to ever seem or to feel that he's being forced into anything. And that's the cause of his hesitation here and his irritation with Priam for the emotional manipulation. There's the conflict. Achilles has to be Achilles. He has to live up to this standard that's in his own mind to be always the greatest hero, the greatest and most superlative everything. He has to live up to what he imagines his father wants him to be. Now, despite his sudden burst of irritation at Priam, Achilles does actually comply with Priam's request, and the turnaround is sudden. Author Ronald Knox, in his paper titled Blameless Achilles, argues that this moment here, Achilles' sudden anger, a brief return of his former wrathful self, is a pivotal moment for Achilles' growth. And I agree with him. Because up until now, during this visit of Priam's, Achilles has been going along with helping Priam simply because his mother, his divine mother, told him it was the will of the gods that he return Hector's body to Priam. But it's at this moment, right here, that Achilles realizes that he could defy Zeus. Listen again to what Achilles says at the end of his speech. Therefore now stir my heart no more amid my troubles, lest I leave not even thee in peace, old sire, within my hut, albeit thou art my suppliant, and lest I transgress the commandment of Zeus. Achilles knows he could simply kill Priam, and the former, wrathful Achilles, would have done that. But this Achilles, right here and right now, chooses not to kill Priam. Achilles is no longer an agent of outside forces, whether of the gods or of his own internal emotions. His wrath that overwhelmed him early on and for much of the Iliad, and his grief that's similarly dominated him more recently. Achilles is his own man now. We will see this in the next few interactions that remain between Achilles and Priam. Achilles is quite clearly now a kindly and willing participant, helping this old man out simply because he reminds Achilles of his own father, whom Achilles is unable to help. What changed for Achilles? I would argue that it suddenly hit him somewhere deep in his gut that a father can love his son even in failure, even in death, even if that son will never send one more looted anything home again. And it is a quick turnaround, but watch the rest of Achilles and Priam's interactions. There's never another testy moment between the two of them. We will even see Achilles go out of his way to be kind to Priam. While Priam waits inside the hut, Achilles, along with Automedon and Alkimos, go outside and send in Idaeus to rest along with Priam. And they unload the treasure, but they leave some of the clothing to be used to wrap Hector's body. And this is a gift from Achilles to his enemy. He's being a nice guy now. And then they have some of the maids wash Hector's body and they anoint him with oil, probably olive oil, although it's not specified. Oil was often used in ancient times on the skin, both for everyday purposes and as part of religious rituals. And this persists even today in some Christian denominations. For instance, in the Roman Catholic Church, oil is used in the sacraments of confirmation and of holy orders. Once Hector's body has been cleaned and anointed with oil and wrapped in some of the luxurious clothing that had been brought as part of the ransom, Achilles now moans aloud. He's racked with guilt for what he's doing, preparing the body and showing honor to the killer of Patroclus. And he cries aloud to his beloved in the underworld, "Patroclus, be not vexed with me if thou hear, even in the house of Hades, that I have given back noble Hector unto his dear father. For not unworthy is the ransom he hath given me, whereof I will deal to thee again thy rightful share." Thus spake noble Achilles, and went back into the hut, and sate him down on the cunningly wrought couch whence he had arisen by the opposite wall, and spake a word to Priam. "Thy son, old sire, is given back as thou wouldst, and lieth on a bier. And with the break of day thou shalt see him thyself as thou carriest him. But now bethink we us of supper. For even fair-haired Niobe bethought her of meat, she whose 12 children perished in her halls, 6 daughters and 6 lusty sons. The sons Apollo, in his anger against Niobe, slew with arrows from his silver bow, and the daughters archer Artemis, for that Niobe matched herself against fair-cheeked Leto, saying that the goddess bare but herself many children. So they, though they were but twain, destroyed the others all. 9 days they lay in their blood, nor was there any to bury them, for Cronion turned the folk to stone. Yet on the 10th day the gods of heaven buried them, and she then bethought her of meat, when she was wearied out with weeping tears. And somewhere now among the cliffs, on the lonely mountains, even on Sipylos, where they say are the couching place of nymphs that dance around Achelous, there she, albeit a stone, broodeth still over her troubles from the gods. But come, let us too, noble father, take thought of meat, and afterward thou shalt mourn over thy dear son, as thou bearest him to Ilios, and many tears shall be his due." Achilles is back in the hut, and he's let Priam know that Hector's body has been prepared for transportation back to Troy in the morning, and invites Priam to have dinner and then to rest here for the night. The reference to Niobe is a mythological story about a woman who lost many children, like Priam has, although in her case, her children were specifically killed by the gods Artemis and Apollo for Niobe's insulting of their mother, Leto. Priam has done nothing to deserve his fate. his children were just caught up in this war. The point of the story is that even Niobe took a break from grieving children to eat something. Now Achilles and his men prepare a meal for Priam, and then they all eat, even though Achilles and his guys had just eaten before Priam arrived. Maybe it would have been rude or awkward to have Priam eat alone. We've also seen a number of instances throughout the Iliad where people eat multiple meals in succession. So another interpretation for the original listeners of the Iliad may have just been a signaling of just how wealthy all these leaders of the past were. There's a moment at the end of their meal when Achilles and Priam witness each other and appreciate one another, and it's striking for its silence. But when they had put off the desire of meat and drink, then Priam, son of Dardanos, marveled at Achilles to see how great he was and how goodly, for he was like a god to look upon. And Achilles marveled at Priam, son of Dardanos, beholding his noble aspect and hearkening to his words. But when they had gazed their fill upon one another, then first spake the old man, godlike Priam, to Achilles. Now presently give me whereon to lie, fosterling of Zeus, that of sweet sleep also we may now take our fill at rest. For never yet have mine eyes closed beneath their lids, since at thy hands my son lost his life. But I continually mourn and brood over countless griefs, groveling in the courtyard, close amid the mire. Now at last have I tasted bread and poured bright wine down my throat, but till now I had tasted naught. Priam admits to Achilles that he hasn't slept once since Hector died, in addition to not having eaten, but has been grieving continually and requests a place to sleep. Achilles complies readily with this request and has the maids prepare a bed for Priam, but he specifically has them set it up in an area within his camp where none of the other Greek leaders are likely to come if they should decide to show up unannounced in the morning for any reason. This scene, dinner and a sleepover with a little sneaky hiding from the other Greeks thrown in, is becoming really cozy and not at all what we expected when Priam first set out for Achilles' camp, followed by the people of Troy wailing and weeping as if he was going off to his death. Showing the bed to him, Achilles says to Priam, "Lie thou without, dear sire, lest there come hither one of the counselors of the Achaeans, such as ever take counsel with me by my side, as custom is. If any of such should behold thee through the swift black night, forthwith he might haply tell it to Agamemnon, shepherd of the host, and thus would there be a delay in giving back the dead. But come say this to me, and tell it true. How many days' space art thou fain to make funeral for noble Hector, so that for so long I may myself abide, and may keep back the host?" Wow, did you catch that? Achilles is thinking ahead to what the actual funeral for his enemy, the killer of Patroclus, will entail. And Achilles offers Priam a truce. He is offering to not only stay out of the war himself for the duration of Hector's funeral, but is saying he'll keep back the host, meaning he'll see to it that the Greeks honor the truce that he's making on their behalf. He's not even asking Priam, "Hey, old man, you want a temporary truce for Hector's funeral?" Achilles' only question to Priam is for how many days he wants. This is far beyond what Zeus was demanding of Achilles. This is a decision Achilles is making out of kindness to an old man who reminds him of his father. Author Louise Pratt, in her paper titled "The Parental Ethos of the Iliad," makes numerous wonderful arguments about the important and even central role the parental relationship has throughout the Iliad. This is a rich read, and I very much recommend you check it out. So I've placed a link to it in the show notes. She observes, for instance, that the entire Iliad is bookended by two suppliant fathers begging for the release of their children. Remember Chryses in the very opening of the Iliad? He was the first speaking character. Priam will be the last. For our purposes right now, I'll draw your attention to one key point she makes, which is that it's only here with Priam that Achilles, for the first time in the entire Iliad, weeps for his mortal father's sufferings rather than crying to his immortal mother about his own sufferings. The growth that Achilles is undergoing here is complex. Here are the components I see in it. 1, a feeling of adequacy and forgiveness from his own father for the shortcomings that he feels within himself. 2, an elevation to the independence and dignity he sees in Priam and recalls in his own father. And 3, acceptance of human mortality, which is obvious in the face of this elderly man who he's come to admire. The deeds of youth and the desire of immortality through glorious war, they seem petty when viewed through the eyes of an elderly father mourning his glorious yet dead son, gone before his time. Achilles admires Priam, the risk he's taken on, coming here alone in the night for his son. It's awakened something better in Achilles. For all the appearance of grandeur that Achilles had before, he's a more whole person now, and he's achieved a peace that we've never seen in him before. Priam seems to have accomplished the impossible. He can now actually envision waking up in the morning and, with Hermes' protection, riding straight out of the enemy camp with Hector's body. Priam requests 11 days for the proper heroic funeral his noble son Hector deserves. If thou art verily willing that I accomplish noble Hector's funeral, by doing as thou sayest, O Achilles, thou wilt do me grace. For thou knowest how we are pent within the city, and wood from the mountain is far to fetch, and the Trojans are much in fear. 9 days will we make moan for him in our halls, and on the 10th we will hold funeral, and the folk shall feast, and on the 11th we will make a barrow over him, and on the 12th we will do battle if need be. Then again spake the fleet noble Achilles unto him, saying, All this, O ancient Priam, shall be as thou biddest, for I will hold back the battle even so long a time as thou tellest me. Thus speaking, he clasped the old man's right hand at the wrist, lest he should be anywise afraid at heart. So they in the forepart of the house laid them down, Priam and the herald, with wise thoughts at their hearts. But Achilles slept in a recess of the firm-wrought hut, and beside him lay fair-cheeked Briseis. Having received this promise for a truce, so the Trojans can hold Hector's funeral, and reassurance from Achilles, all of Priam's concerns have been addressed, and he and all the others inside Achilles' camp now go to sleep. We get this one brief mention of Briseis here. Is this significant? I'm not sure. Thetis had mentioned to Achilles that his days are numbered, and the love of a woman would be good for him. Maybe this is a sign of Achilles' peace at heart now. Once Priam and all the other men have fallen asleep, Hermes appears above Priam's bed, and we can assume he's again in the form of the young man he appeared as before. And remember, this guise of Hermes is the character of an insider of Achilles' camp choosing to help out Priam. A little ironically, Hermes says to Priam, perhaps in a joking way, expressing some surprise at Priam's willingness to sleep so contentedly among his enemy, Old sire, no thought then hadst thou of any evil, seeing thou yet sleepest among men that are thine enemies? For that Achilles spared thee. Truly now hast thou won back thy dear son, and at great price. But for thy life will thy sons thou hast left behind be offering threefold ransom, if but Agamemnon, Atreus' son, become aware of thee, and aware be all the Achaeans. Thus spake he, and the old man feared and roused the herald. And Hermes yoked the horses and mules for them, and himself drave them lightly through the camp, and none was aware of them. Priam experienced real fear once Hermes pointed out just how foolish his sleeping there was. With the god now available and willing to escort him and Hector's body back to Troy, slipping out of the Greek camp quietly in the night is obviously the smart move. Hermes drives the cart again right through the oblivious Greek defenses. But when they came to the ford of the fair flowing river, even eddying Xanthos, begotten of immortal Zeus, then Hermes departed up to high Olympus, and mourning of the saffron robe spread all over the earth. And they with wail and moan drave the horses to the city, and mules drew the dead. With the recrossing of the river Xanthos, Hermes departs, and the sun rises. Priam has returned to the world of the living, symbolically, with the body of his dead son. The metaphorical journey is over, and the literal journey nearly so. Priam and Idaeus now continue on alone to Troy. Nor knew them any man or fair-girdled woman until Cassandra, peer of golden Aphrodite, having gone up upon Pergamos, was aware of her dear father as he stood in the car, and the herald that was crier to the town. Then beheld she him that lay upon the bier behind the mules, and thereat she wailed and cried aloud throughout all the town, O men and women of Troy, come ye hither and look upon Hector, if ever while he was alive ye rejoiced when he came back from battle, since great joy was he to the city and all the folk. As the old men in their cart approach Troy, no one seems to see them. They're still invisible like they were when passing through the Greek defenses. It's not until Priam's daughter Cassandra spots them from atop the citadel known as Pergamos that anyone becomes aware of them. Cassandra was a priestess of Apollo, the god of prophecy, and she'd been given the gift of prophecy by Apollo. But when she spurned his advances, he cursed her, making it so that no one would believe her predictions. However, in this case, she's not predicting, she's simply saying something that's going on now. So everyone not only heard her crying out from atop the tower, but believed her, and all came out to see. Nor was man or woman left within the city, for upon all came unendurable grief. And near the gates they met Priam bringing home the dead. First bewailed him his dear wife and lady mother, as they cast them on the fair-wheeled wain and touched his head. And around them stood the throng and wept. So all day long unto the setting of the sun they had lamented Hector in tears without the gate, had not the old man spoken from the car among the folk. Give me place for the mules to pass through. Hereafter ye shall have your fill of wailing, when I have brought him into his home. Thus spake he, and they parted asunder and gave place to the wain. And the others, when they had brought him to the famous house, laid him on a fretted bed, and set beside him minstrels, leaders of the dirge, who wailed a mournful lay, while the women made moan with them. And among the women, white-armed Andromache led the lamentation, while in her hands she held the head of Hector, slayer of men. Husband, thou art gone young from life, and leavest me a widow in thy halls. And the child is yet but a little one, child of ill-fated parents, thee and me, nor methinks shall he grow up to manhood. For ere then shall this city be utterly destroyed. For thou art verily perished, who didst watch over it, who guardest it, and keptest it safe, its noble wives and infant little ones. These soon shall be voyaging in the hollow ships, yea, and I too with them, and thou, my child, shalt either go with me unto a place where thou shalt toil at unseemly tasks, laboring before the face of some harsh lord, or else some Achaean will take thee by the arm and hurl thee from the battlement, a grievous death, for that he is wroth because Hector slew his brother or father or son, since full many of the Achaeans at Hector's hands have bitten the firm earth. For no light hand had thy father in the grievous fray. Therefore the folk lament him throughout the city, and woe unspeakable and mourning hast thou left to thy parents, Hector. But with me chiefliest shall grievous pain abide. For neither didst thou stretch thy hands to me from a bed in thy death, neither didst speak to me some memorable word that I might have thought on evermore, as my tears fall night and day. Thus spake she wailing, and the women joined their moan. And among them Hecabe again led the loud lament. Hector, of all my children, far dearest to my heart, verily, while thou wert alive, dear wert thou to the gods, and even in thy doom of death have they had care for thee. For other sons of mine, whom he took captive, would fleet Achilles sail beyond the unvintaged sea unto Samos and Imbros and smoking Lemnos. But when, with keen-edged bronze, he had bereft thee of thy life, he was fain to drag thee oft around the tomb of his comrade, even Patroclus, whom thou slewest, yet might he not raise him up thereby. But now, all dewy fresh, thou liest in our halls, like one on whom Apollo, lord of the silver bow, hath descended and slain him with his gentle darts. Thus spake she wailing, and stirred unending moan. Then thirdly Helen led their sore lament. Hector, of all my brethren of Troy, far dearest to my heart. Truly my lord is god like Alexandros, who brought me to Troyland. Would I had died ere then! For this is now the 20th year since I went thence, and am gone from my own native land. But never yet heard I evil or despiteful word from thee. Nay, if any other haply upbraided me in the palace halls, whether brother or sister of thine, or brother's fair-robed wife, or thy mother, but thy father is ever kind to me, as he were my own. Then wouldst thou soothe such words and refrain them by the gentleness of thy spirit and by thy gentle words. Therefore bewail I thee with pain at heart, and my hapless self with thee, for no more is any left in wide Troyland to be my friend and kind to me, but all men shudder at me. Thus spake she wailing, and therewith the great multitude of the people groaned. But the old man Priam spake a word among the folk. Bring wood, men of Troy, unto the city, and be not anywise afraid at heart of a crafty ambush of the Achaeans. For this message Achilles gave me when he sent me from the black ships, that they should do us no hurt until the 12th morn arise. Thus spake he, and they yoked oxen and mules to wains, and quickly then they flocked before the city. So 9 days they gathered great store of wood. But when the 10th morn rose with light for men, then bare they forth brave Hector, weeping tears, and on a lofty pyre they laid the dead man, and thereon cast fire. But when the daughter of dawn, rosy-fingered morning, shone forth, then gathered the folk around glorious Hector's pyre. First quenched they with bright wine all the burning, so far as the fire's strength went. And then his brethren and comrades gathered his white bones lamenting, and big tears flowed down their cheeks. And the bones they took and laid in a golden urn, shrouding them in soft purple robes, and straightway laid the urn in a hollow grave, and piled thereon great close-set stones, and heaped with speed a barrow, while watchers were set everywhere around, lest the well-grieved Achaeans should make onset before the time. And when they had heaped the barrow, they went back, and gathered them together, and feasted right well in noble feast at the palace of Priam, Zeus-fostered king. Thus held they funeral for Hector, tamer of horses. And that is it. That is the famous last line of the Iliad. Thus held they funeral for Hector, tamer of horses. And it's the end of our journey together through the Iliad. We've seen Achilles grow from someone who would stop participating in a war over an insult, despite the grievous consequences to his own friends and loved ones, into someone who would stop a war at his enemy's request because his enemy reminds him of his own father. The divine world is the divine world, and good things are doled out to mortals by the divine at their whim and taken away just as casually. Bad things too. That's the meaning of the 2 jars parable. And the gods have that right. Zeus especially can do whatever he wants. It's how we respond to the fortunes of our lives that matters. This is the understanding and measure of peace that Achilles has found. The war continues. There's lots more battles. The famous wooden horse is built. You can read about all that in The Fall of Troy, aka the Post-Homerica, and I've placed a link to that in the show notes. All the growth we've seen Achilles go through kind of evaporates, but then that's the case with sequels so often. To recapture the magic of the first, they try to walk over the same ground that they've trod before. A final word. I'm grateful for your support. I began this project about a year ago with a vague idea of sharing my enthusiasm for the Iliad in a podcast format. The idea was that it would be a sort of virtual book club, but one where I put my ideas out there for you to react to privately. And this ties into a concept regarding ancient literature I've long had, which is that we're all engaging in a centuries-long conversation when we read and react to these ancient stories. Homer says something, we react to it, maybe we write something in response to it, maybe it impacts our lives and the worlds around us in other ways. I like this idea that I'm participating in a conversation with all the great minds throughout history, and I wanted to share that with you. Anyway, at the time I started, I had no idea how to even go about starting a podcast, and I suppose I still don't know much about the podcasting part beyond this, talking into my phone. As for the composing part, determining what I had to bring to the table other than an out-of-copyright text, it took me a while to find my voice, but I feel I hit my stride finally. I'd like to continue this series with other epics from the ancient world. The Odyssey is an obvious next choice, and there are others that I've read and would like to share with you. Your thoughts and feedback are appreciated, but mostly, I'm just grateful that you've shared this time with me, as I've spent a whole year engrossed in my favorite book. Thank you for going on this journey with me.